Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, and welcome to another episode of the podcast for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. I'm your host, Edwin Stepp, executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the president and founder of Produce Buzz, along with Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, both contributing editors to Produce Buzz. We have just returned from an important conference and trade show dedicated to the promotion of fresh fruit and vegetables. The annual show is organized by the Southeast Produce Council, a nonprofit based in Georgia, whose mission is to promote the consumption of fresh fruit and vegetables everywhere, but with a focus on the southeastern United States. With over 2,500 members of farmers, shippers, wholesalers, and retailers of fresh produce, the organization is having a major impact in that mission. This year's show was held in Orlando, Florida, and over 2,600 people attended it to showcase and learn about the latest trends in the world of fresh fruit and veggies. We were able to meet up with some of those attendees at the show to talk to them about their work in getting people to eat more fresh produce. Over the next few weeks, we will share those interviews right here on the podcast. Since we were in a conference center, there is a bit more background noise than usual in these interviews, so we apologize in advance for that and hope that you don't find it too distracting. In today's episode, we feature the first of those guests, a woman who is the CEO of an organization that is leading the way, inspiring people to eat more fruits and veggies. They have been doing a lot of groundbreaking research, especially in behavioral science, to help people develop healthy habits in the food they choose to eat. So no time to waste. Let's get right into the interview. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans. Welcome to another episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so honored to have a woman on our podcast today who is probably doing more than almost anyone on the planet to get people to eat more plants.
That's
Did you see what I did there? Planet, plant.
Yes, I saw that. I totally got it.
Today we have Wendy Reinhardt Kapsak. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist and the president and the CEO of the Produce for Better Health Foundation. Now that's what we're all about, trying to get people to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables for better health. In the foundation's efforts, they work with more than 500 industry and government partners to advance the overall effort of increasing fruit and vegetable consumption. Prior to joining PBH, Produce for Better Health Foundation, Wendy was the global lead for food, nutrition, and health partnerships at the Monsanto Company. While at Monsanto, her efforts focused on bridging the food, nutrition, culinary, and agriculture communities for greater collaboration. Prior to Monsanto, Wendy served as Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the International Food Information Council in Washington, D.C., where she directed communication strategies, including consumer research, opinion leader, and media outreach, as well as publications and partnerships for multiple food safety and nutrition-related issues. Did I get that right?
You did. That's a lot. Boy, am I tired.
You've done a lot. That's right. Let's first talk about your background before we get to the PBH and education and career. What was your inspiration to focus on nutrition and diet and Produce for Better Health?
You know what? I actually started out wanting to be a physician, and sometimes I still think I want to do that on occasion.
You can do it.
But what ended up happening was is my mother actually got terminal cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And so through that process, I really, and healthcare was changing in the 90s. And so I really felt at that point that when you go into the hospital, is that many people are so very sick. And I think through the experience then with my mother and watching that process, I really believed then that I wanted to actually help people be well versus treat illness myself.
Yep.
And then you take a step back and you say, gosh, what do I really want to do? What's behind all of that? And I think I really want to help people, and there's so many ways of doing that.
Right.
And certainly now where I've ended up at PBH, it's like the best of both worlds, an interest in health, well-being, food, nutrition is a part of that, and then significant importance and focus on fruits and vegetables, which is a dietitian's dream job, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a very good, interesting doctor on one of our past episodes who was a cardiologist for 20 years. And at one point he said, I realized I wasn't practicing healthcare, I was practicing sick care.
Oh, wow.
And now he's shifted total focus to a more holistic approach. He's not abandoned cardiology. He's not saying it's a bad thing, but he says the focus has to become in prevention. So that's really where he went to focus on.
And have you ever seen any worse food for health than what people are given in the hospital? I mean,
well, or at the same time, when you study to become a registered dietitian and people are really super sick and then you're supposed to go and give them some parting words essentially, now go off and be healthy after you spent time in the hospital. I just think I realize that's not the most important thing to focus on at that moment. That person's really overwhelmed typically, trying to figure out how they're gonna go home and now live their life with whatever condition they're dealing with now. So sometimes I was supposed to give them diet advice, but I really just wanted to wish them well and give them encouragement.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. People are overwhelmed. And that the mental aspect of it is very important too, right? Not just the fruits and veggies.
Well, you know what? You bring up a good point. Mental health, recently our Surgeon General indicated that we have a mental health crisis in the youth in our nation. And one of the things that we focused on when I came on board at PBH was really looking at not just the health and nutrition part of fruits and vegetables, but looking at other benefits. In fact, benefits that were more immediate, like feelings and emotion and well-being. And so there was research that wasn't necessarily nutrition research, but more coming out of the psychological research that was indicative of, the more people are eating fruits and vegetables, the higher their reported levels of happiness and overall life satisfaction. And it was significant. And it was significant for those that ate fruits and vegetables 6 to 7 days per week. And we know that many Americans are not necessarily hitting their recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables. And so, gosh, I don't know, are people are produce eaters, fresh produce eaters, are they glass half full people? Or are they really people that, are benefiting truly?
Are we counting people at this particular table?
Yeah.
We have a mixture, I think.
Yeah. It takes all kinds, guys. It takes all kinds.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. I've seen the research and the studies about how, especially lately, about how it can help your mood, help your emotions. There's a lot coming out there.
And there's, if you go on fruitsandveggies.org, we actually have some resources there around what we like to call food rooted in a better mood. For the second quarter of this year, we're going to focus on that specifically. And there's actually a lot of food and nutrition science around actually the gut-mind connection. It's a lot of emerging research. And so sometimes, it's great to hear that stat. Oh, these people that eat this, they actually report greater, overall life satisfaction and happiness. But in the end, or behind all of that, it's like, man, there's science there. And there's really something to it and something to explore further. And I think something for the industry to explore further. I really think this industry, I'll include myself in it, we've only really scratched the surface when it comes to exploring the emotional connectivity between the fruit and vegetable eating experience and really helping people identify what they eat is how they feel. and how you feel over a long period of time. Hopefully, you'll continue to make those really important choices that continue that cycle of health and well-being.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think you're absolutely right. That has not been a focus. It's been more about the physiology or our bodies and how that responds. But the mental health thing is great.
Well, that too, and I like, there's a couple things I want to just add to that. One is very few people, and this goes back to research I did at some of those other jobs that you were talking about, is very few people want to talk about cancer and their food. I mean, most well people do not want to talk about that.
That's interesting.
They don't want to talk about heart disease because they do and they don't. I mean, they want that is so, for many, so far off. It's a long-term benefit,
right.
Whereas what we're trying to do is connect to the immediate feelings and benefits that people can experience. And so the funny part of that is people actually talk, when we do our research at PBH, one of the most immediate benefits they talk about straight up is just being more regular.
Oh, right.
And so that's one that you can feel, everybody. You know when that's been good.
It's pretty immediate, too, isn't
it? Don't be shy about it, everybody.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I had loved the focus that you have put on at PBH in those kind of things, the immediacy of it, not lecturing to people like, Mom, eat your vegetables, eat your veggies, it's the right thing to do, preaching. Can you talk about that a bit,
Sure.
in the philosophy?
Absolutely. So, I think it's important when we're looking at one of the biggest, I would say, and most complex challenges that the fresh produce industry faces is consumption. And everyone talks about it, and everyone wrings their hands about it.
Yeah.
And then, but what I felt we at PBH maybe could do a better job of was actually some self-reflection and say, are the things that we're doing, are the approaches that we're taking, are they truly having an impact? And no issue as complex as fruit and vegetable consumption can be handled by one organization, but we could reframe how we look at the issue. And so we engaged with a behavioral scientist specifically, and now everything we're doing is rooted in behavioral science. Yeah. And so a key tenet of that is really looking at a behavioral framework. And that behavioral framework is know, K-N-O-W, feel is the secondary step of that, and then do, the action of it. And so previous campaigns, things like a PBH campaign like 5 a day or More Matters, these were campaigns that were helpful in reinforcing the healthfulness of fruits and vegetables, or the fact that, yes, in fact, they could have a health benefit. But they weren't necessarily emotive or aligned with people's values in an emotional connectivity way that then would inspire the action. Yeah. And so really now, our call to action, it's have a plant. Our target audience for that is millennials and Gen Zs, and we're seeking to kind of get a little bit of wind in our sails, if you will, from the plant-based or the plant-forward movement. Right. It's really touching on, yes, it reinforces that fruits and vegetables are healthy, and oh, by the way, they don't think it's pot, like the plants are pot. They actually do think it's fruits and vegetables. And so they have an emotive or emotional connectivity with that message. It's aligning with a value, which could be about sustainability, or it could be about healthfulness or well-being. Right. And it reminds them and encourages them to purchase or select. And for an organization like PBH, which is really trying to spread the word, it gets them to want to share that message in a way that signifies what their values are. And for our core audience, that's really important in terms of touching on all three of those things.
Right. I was privileged to be in Scottsdale when you revealed
the
launched,
big reveal. Yeah. Sure, the big reveal, the launch
for Have a Plant.
Yes.
Talk about that was it is a brilliant campaign. I was really excited to see it come out there and all the beautiful marketing work you did around it. And can you talk about how that's gone and how the mission's going there?
Absolutely. So the Have a Plant movement was launched in April of 2019. And since that time, we're starting from nothing, if you will, in terms of, do people know about this, whatever. So now if we say nobody knew, except, us and the people in that room. And then obviously we launched over digital and social media,
Right.
is now we're reaching millions of consumers every single day. And in fact, we're reaching into the hundreds of millions now with consumers. And so what we find is that a lot of influencers, particularly in the digital and online space where we're investing, is they are using the quote, the Have a Plant hashtag, and they're really spreading the movement that fruits and veggies are the plants that no one's eating enough of, and there's great benefit in the eating experience.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the long term, always,
Right.
but how it tastes, how it looks, how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
My child, who's 25, she and her friends are very community-based and walk to the bookstore instead of just ordering it on Amazon. So they're trying to make a change there. But I find that they all are big veggie and fruit eaters. But that could be because how she was raised also, and
Sure.
like beget like. How does that get influenced by if your mother always fed you fill in the blank? Is it until the millennials and the Gen X's go out of their mother's home?
Yeah, you raised a really good point. So we did some consumption research last year, and it's a project we do every 5 years. It's called the State of the Plate. And
It's called what?
It's called the State of the Plate, and you can go on fruitsandveggies.org and get more information on it too. But one of the things that I think it's really important when we're thinking about produce consumption is there's a lot of data out there. There's we like to say, let's take a comprehensive look at this. So there's volume data, meaning how much are people eating. There's frequency data, which is how often they're eating it. And so that's what we're looking at in the State of the Plate. And then there's this typical things that maybe the industry really pays attention to as well, like sales data. And so it's important, I think, look at all of them all three of those categories to understand consumer behavior. In the latest State of the Plate report, what we found is that you raise generational kind of carrying on the message from generation to generation, and we find that is actually no longer happening. So the consumers that you could count on to kind of keep that consumption number from at least declining and at the very least maintaining, they're not eating fruits and vegetables in the same way that they used to be. And so typically that would be, let's say, those consumers of older generations, and then the really young kids. So for example, in the latest report, what we found is, particularly for vegetables, is that there was a decline in vegetable frequency. And this is really important. I'm going to get to this, is about habits. So if we use frequency as a proxy for habit, what we're seeing is there are less vegetable habits across all age groups. And this is concerning because particularly for our younger parents out there, if they're not eating vegetables, then their kids are probably not eating vegetables. And so we have, when you look at the nutrition data and the volume type of data, is what we see is at about 2 years old, when kids are now starting to take on the eating habits of the entire family, that is the critical point at which their overall diet quality, which is significantly relies on fruit and vegetable, it declines. And so we're seeing, I think we all want to, quote, grow a next generation of fruit and vegetable lovers or eaters. And if we don't switch or change up our approach, I'm not quite sure we'll be able to do that. And so that's why a group like PBH and the others that are focused on these types of efforts are really important, whether it's inspiring consumers to have a positive fruit and vegetable eating experience, or those that, for example, might be more community-based organizations that are delivering food directly to those that maybe are less advantaged and or wouldn't have the exposure, let's say, otherwise. And so you raised all of those issues in your question to me. I hope I answered them. It will never be any one thing that fixes a complex issue, but rather a ecosystem that's conducive to fruit and vegetable consumption on all fronts.
That's very interesting. So you're in a sense the primary influencers for the younger generations are their parents or the families. What about talk about your ambassadors and the influence they have? I know there's been some campaigns in the past, and I don't think it was PBH, but they were engaging a lot of celebrities. I mean, well-known celebrities. But you, I think, have a more practical approach. They are celebrities. They're not on the level of some of these others.
Sports celebrities, for example, yes.
But you're now reaching hundreds of millions of people through these influencers. Talk about your network there and who they are.
Absolutely, of course, yeah. So PBH is looking at all the places where people could make a decision. And so we kind of simplify that and say there are 3 points of influence when we think about consumers and them increasing their fruit and vegetable consumption. There's the point of sale. So certainly retail is a significant influencer when we think about purchase, and they can also be for consumption as well. Then we think about the point of flavor. So culinarians, food service, and that's a really important point. And all of these, by the way, have multiple verticals within them, retail as well as food service. And then we look at the point of inspiration. And these are folks that, depending on who we're trying to reach, look like me, or in the same life stage as me, have special knowledge for which to impart to me, or that I identify with. And that's going to be really different for all different kinds of folks. Yeah. And so really this broad-based influencer network we have at PBH is made up of all 3 points of influence, anything from corporate retail dietitian, who essentially is the brand face of the retailer in many instances, to large-scale food service providers who are deciding what is even going on the menu in those schools or in those large-scale settings where we're delivering, millions of meals a day, all the way down to the mom or the dad that's trying to figure out what they're going to make for dinner tonight. And so when we first initiated the Have a Plant movement in April of 2019, we started out with 12. Okay? and now we have more than 300. So, and those are people who self-select in. They play all different roles to PBH, and they can really serve the industry. Some of them are advisors to us at a strategic level. Yeah. I mean, these are the corporate level folks of all the major retailers or food service establishments. And then we have folks that are really essentially boots on the ground in the digital ecosystem, creating content for PBH. And they have been trained essentially in this no, feel, do behavioral framework to focus, yes, on reinforcing the healthfulness, but also really coming up with solutions that try to drive habit.
You learn in sales that every buying decision is emotional. It's not rational. I mean, when it actually happens, the rational has to be there. The no part has to be there to justify when they get to the emotional points.
Yes.
So I think you're really going to the right place here with getting the emotional decisions.
That makes me feel very good that you agree.
That's what I'm saying.
But what I hear you say is...
but some of those techniques are actually really important. Yeah. And if we weren't going to have the greatest impact on knowledge-based campaigns alone, then we do need to switch gears, right? And or consider some new approaches. Yes.
And this might be a minute part of the issue. The parents their consumptions are decreasing, so therefore their children's will be decreasing. Is that back to the old, my mother used to boil the heck out of fill in the blank?
Yes.
So many people do not know.
She killed whatever she cooked.
So by and large, it's because who was cooking the vegetables that they ruined it for?
I could tell you some similar stories from my own childhood as well, things that should have been probably dressed up a different way to be desirable. But I think that's what we were saying before about that eating experience. So if you have a pleasurable experience, it could be really anything, is you most likely want to repeat that experience. Less pleasurable, not so much. So we could be talking about if we really unpack that feeling and emotive part, we like to break that up in two parts. One is, I like to call it the difference between lust and love. Okay, so we have to like have that lust, like craveability, and that's where that flavor comes in. But then we also have to cultivate desire, and so that's a little bit more involved. That's more than one date. That's more, you know what I'm saying? So we have to have that repeat exposure of that pleasurable experience to then hopefully establish a desire long term and the doing long term.
Yeah. So is that a good recipe? Is that how you get the second interview?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, let's cultivate some desire here.
Well, that's a good point. I think in this nation, the palates need to be retrained, in a sense. There was a good book that came out a few years ago called The Dorito Effect. Did you see that?
I'm familiar
with it?
I'm familiar. I don't think I read the whole thing, but I'm familiar.
The basic premise of the book, which was written by a journalist named Mark Schatzker, is that over the past few decades, two trends in the production of our food have been affecting the flavor experience. Firstly, processed foods such as Doritos, from which the book gets its name, of course, have been engineered to have increasingly more intense flavors to the point of becoming addictive. And then secondly, at the same time, our fruits and vegetables have been bred, you could say also engineered, primarily for shelf life and appearance at the expense of flavor. So now we're at a point where the healthy foods, fresh fruit and veggies, can't compete in flavor with the unhealthy processed foods. What do you say to that?
You know what? I'm glad you raised that. I'd like to push a little right now.
Okay, please.
So, I've had the great pleasure of working in lots of industries. I would say this is one of my favorites. And I said it was a dream job, remember? And one of the challenges, I think, is there's a lot of wringing of hands when we start talking about, well, they have bigger budgets and they make the food taste great and but I think it comes back to us. And so to me, I think there's a lot of, and I don't think Wendy can change this, but there's a lot of what I would call intra-industry competition. And that has to take place. I mean, there's a real thing. It's the sales, right. it's the policy, etc. But I think on some issues there is an opportunity to unify.
Yeah, that's
and
a good
to
point.
recognize who is our competition really. Is it each other?
No, it's probably McDonald's.
Or is it other potentially convenience foods that also, by the way, taste wonderful?
Yeah.
And are we going to knock them for that? Are we going to try to really say, you know what are they doing that we're not doing?
Yeah.
And I believe that we're wasting time wringing our hands.
Yeah.
I think it's the time to really, on this, it can be a competitive issue in certain contexts, but on some level, it shouldn't be. It should be a unifying issue for the industry, and I think that's really what I'm hopeful to do at PBH is to say, how can we elevate fruit and vegetable consumption as a national priority? We'll never get there, by the way, if we don't really recognize what our true competition actually is.
That's a very good point. I'd never thought about it in that way. And I've seen this on your website where you don't say don't eat the cheese and meat charcuterie board. You say just liven it up, put some other things there with it.
Yeah.
Add other things to the things they're already eating, and you're going to get that nutrition.
And this is rooted, this isn't like just like Wendy thinks this or whatever. This is like really rooted in behavioral science. So what we're looking for is saying, if we're going to increase consumption, we have to give more reasons, more opportunities, we have to form more frequent habits or frequent occasions for which people can enjoy not just one commodity, but a lot of them.
Right.
And so we have to create those opportunities. Well, if we're going to form new habits, we can't actually, sometimes those products will be eaten in isolation, odds are they'll be eaten more likely in a frequent context.
Yeah.
A frequent context is a trigger for which then I have the opportunity to add another, in this case, healthful behavior to then get a pleasurable experience and then hopefully get the repeat. But I have to also have a reward. So there's a context, an action, and then a reward.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to use this one is, let's use brushing your teeth. Okay, and you guys said you like to have fun. So tell me when, hopefully you brush your teeth at least once a day, or this is not going to work. So when do you brush your teeth?
After every single meal.
Wow, and you look at your teeth, they're so pretty.
And I have many processes I go through to brush my teeth.
Really? Really?
I have no idea.
Wow. I didn't know I was
OCD
opening up
when it comes
this
to
one.
that.
Okay, so
How much time you got?
when do you brush your teeth in the morning? Or
When
do you
do I?
brush them in the morning?
Yeah.
Are you sitting, are you standing in front of the mirror?
Yes.
You are. Are you doing that after you eat breakfast or before?
Depends on when I eat.
Okay, so there's a depends. So, and then what about you? Do you,
I twice a day, after breakfast and before I go to bed.
you?
Yeah, I try to twice a day, I would say.
Twice a day. So, but it's probably a little bit different. The point is the action is brushing the teeth, okay? Or eating fruits and vegetables. In this case, though, there's a context. Some people, it's right when they get up it's like they go to the bathroom, they wash their hands, they brush their teeth. Some people, you've heard of brushing their teeth in the shower while they're listening to music. For you have a elaborate
routine,
process
yes.
for which you're going to brush your teeth. And then what's the reward? Well, the reward is fresh breath. I don't have things, hanging between, I have a feeling there might be some, flossing involved in yours. So I don't have things hanging in my teeth. It feels like I just brushed my teeth. That's the reward.
Okay,
so
got it.
if we looked at every point for which consumers have the opportunity to select, purchase, store, prepare, consume, and we could break that out even much more in detail, is we would want to try to almost identify the rate limiting steps for consumption and try to overcome those in a common context.
Yeah.
So if you're a marketeer or a merchandiser or whatever, how are you creating a context for which coffee is another one. People have coffee habits. How do I get them to have a fruit and vegetable habit? And most people have a ritual for which they go have their coffee. It could be the smell. It could be, what are all of the senses for which we can get people to recognize.
Right.
And flavor and smell and the appearance and all of that goes into it.
Yeah.
And if we just focus on, do we make the sale? Super important, by the way. I just wrote a piece that I said, that's super important, by the way. We can't win games if we don't try to, make the quarterly sales numbers or the weekly sales, whatever you're held accountable to.
Right.
But we also have to we also have to play the long game too.
Yeah.
And how do we break that down into winning plays?
Right.
And everybody can participate there.
Yeah.
But the big thing is the pleasurable experience with the product. And a lot of people are lost when it comes to so many items in the produce
Yes.
aisle. How do I fix that? Okay, I cooked it, but it tastes like mush, whatever.
Yes.
The education on each product is really vital.
Yeah. And we're trying to do that. So again, we break that up into know, feel, and do. So the knowledge part, that's facts, figures. Do I know how to select, store, and serve this? Then am I confident? Because it's not all about just, there's a great campaign by a large berry grower, and it was around berry joy, okay?
Yep.
And so it had this, I love this because I put this on a slide because it's awesome with an audience, is if you can visualize a slide or a picture, a graph, it's a bar graph, and so it's asking the question, which one of these products provides the most joy? That's probably oversimplifying. And so there's several fruits, and then there's some vegetables. I gave it away. Let's see if you were listening. Which fruit did people rate as the most joyful?
Berries.
Berries.
Yeah.
How did kale fare on that one? It was the lowest.
yeah,
It was the
probably not too
lowest.
bad. Yeah.
But what were some of the emotions that we can tie to vegetables?
Yeah.
They are harder. They require work.
Right.
But if we can overcome some of those barriers, what is the emotion that we can tap into there? Do you have any ideas?
Well, the thing that came to my mind right away is I love buffalo wings, right?
Oh, okay.
But what are they always served with? Carrots and celery.
Yeah.
And I never used to like to just eat carrots and celery until I started ordering buffalo wings. Now, I go and get carrots and celery sticks and munch on them without
Yeah.
the buffalo wings.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you had a context and then you switched it around.
I mean, that's only a very small one.
But how do you feel after, like, I did the vegetable, if berries and fruit is joyful,
Yeah.
really vegetables are smart and
Yeah,
they
that's a good point.
evoke a sense of pride. If I am successful
I get it.
in this,
Right.
I now have a different emotion for which to
Right,
tap into.
right.
They're not the same. I like to say
Yeah.
fruits and veggies are like your kids. You know, you love them both, but they're not the same, and you can't treat them the same, and you can't expect the same things.
That's a very good point.
And so that's that emotive part. So we're reinforcing those facts and figures. We're talking to consumers about the emotions and encouraging them and talking to them
Yeah.
about the emotional experience to then inspire the doing, and then encouraging, straight up recognizing that habits are less about willpower, the more about thinking about an existing context and an associated reward.
Mindfulness eating is a big thing now.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're focused on that some.
We'll talk about that. I would say
Yeah.
we might capture it in the context of habits.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, a new client that you might really attack is Disney. Because last night I had a charcuterie board, and it had, and you know, generally when you go to a place for that, they get stingy on.
This is through room service, I'm taking it, at the hotel here?
No, I actually did not order room service,
Oh.
but thank you very much. I did thought to cross my mind.
thought you were
did
always a
go
room
down.
You're in your jammies, ordering room service.
No, I was slumming in the bar area, but
But Disney owns this hotel. That's what I'm trying to get across to our
Yes.
listeners so they understand
Yes.
the context. And you went to the restaurant in this hotel.
Correct.
Right.
So they had, you know, usually like the meat part would be what they would skimp on. Somebody who's serving it, right? Because that's going to be probably one of the more expensive, right? They did not skimp on the meat. The cheese they were a little bit stingy with. And certainly like the crackers part of it, which that's got to be the least expensive. They threw a couple olives on there and a pathetic, 2 carrot discs and some pickled
As a
veg.
garnish is what you're saying, I feel like.
So,
that's-
but what was really missing, and I ended up leaving more than half of it, and I boxed it up and brought it home for my husband, but what was really missing was some nice grapes that were on there. Or if they had so many opportunities to put different fruits
You know,
and veggies.
Disney actually did something, and it still goes on today, but that was at the time when this was first introduced, it was really important, particularly in the food and nutrition world. So we talked about the no feel, do behavioral framework. And the doing part, when you look at the literature, is doing is about, or action, is many times will be most successful if it's automatic. Okay? So at the time, there was another book, and it was called Nudge, and it was about these more healthful nudges, essentially what we would call behavioral architecture around trying to make the healthiest choice the easiest choice. And so instead of fries, Disney at the time was one of the leaders in, it was not automatically fries, it was a fresh fruit,
Yeah.
like a fruit salad,
Right.
essentially. And so the default was that. So maybe people they're both great. They're both, from a produce perspective, they're both delicious.
Yeah.
But there was an interest, obviously, from the public health community around fresh fruit in that instance. And they were very much praised for that. You could still order the fries.
Yeah.
And so people
For
did
a small upcharge.
but it was seen as a positive move.
Right.
Now there were probably operational challenges
Yeah.
with that, and so this is where, right, it's that collaboration where we're not just talking about what the ultimate innovation is or the action even from the food service community, but how do we break down those steps so that was easy to implement and easy for consumers to understand, or easy to recognize the choices that they had. And so taking a little bit more time and really breaking down that consumer journey, and thinking about how everybody in the value chain can do their part of making it easy, will make the choices, the healthful ones in this case, more automatic.
Right.
And if they're automatic, then we're going to have an opportunity to increase consumption and by changing habits.
I can tell you firsthand, there's a thing called acquired taste. And you can acquire a taste.
You can.
And I think, the wine industry has wine tastings. I think we need to have vegetable tastings and teach acquired taste.
I love what you're saying. And so actually there's a lot of literature around exposure, both with young children as well as in adults. And the repeated exposure is so critical, but it does yield returns. And the challenging part for young parents, for example, is it could take up to 14 to 16 times for us to really see that return. But you're absolutely right, and I think there's something very important to take away from that. The other, you were talking about, give you another example though. Let's now talk about the influencers you mentioned.
Right.
So there were two instances. It was one of our partners, a apple company, and our grower, and then we also have another potato grower. Okay, and actually one is a grower shipper, and then the potato folks in this case, it's actually a breeder that then's working along the plane. But I wanted to give both a fruit and vegetable example, and both of these folks used our platform in multiple instances to actually break down, really, for example, the different apple varieties. And not just, this took courage, obviously, on their part, and they had lots of varieties of their own, which was helpful, but to really help folks, our influencers, understand all the new varieties and what made them unique, not in isolation, but among each other. And taste is a huge issue when you're selecting a ultimate, whether you're going to use it, for example, for baking or just a snack. I mean, they're going to be different. Right. And there's going to be different flavor notes that are going to appeal to certain folks over others. So, and that actually, if you take the time to do that, I would say this inspired much greater appreciation for the growers and the process associated with developing the varieties as well. But it also created greater appreciation for the innovation that's taking place in the category, which I think is what people really are hoping for with a lot of those varieties. Right. In the instance of potatoes, this was fascinating because at retail, how are potatoes categorized? How are they merchandised?
Oh, with the onions and all the hardware items?
They are, but often, and tell me if
bagged and loose though. Both.
And color.
Yeah.
All right.
And that may or may not. So do consumers, have we trained them to pick by color versus application around taste and flavor?
Right.
And so this company is trying to change the game around potatoes. And so they actually provided us with the influencers with an overview of what they're doing in terms of varieties for certain culinary applications. And they had done a lot of consumer insight work, which indicated that yes, in fact, in this case, young millennials and Gen Zs want this and want to be almost merchandised based on culinary application, not necessarily color, which they care about it but that's only one element for which people are eating. They're eating with their eyes, but ultimately they're eating for an end experience, not necessarily just color. And so I think these things are really important to talk about but they would require more of a systematic change, for example, in terms of produce merchandising and knowledge among produce staff. and also inspiration from consumers.
Good luck with the knowledge on produce staff.
I've heard this, but it reminded me, both of these instances. Have you ever seen that movie Moonstruck with Cher?
A long time
Okay,
ago.
I love this
don't remember
movie.
too much about it.
And anyway, so she's falling in love with the wrong person, and that's Cher's character. But her mother is this Italian mother, very wise, meets a man who keeps trying to date younger women. And he realizes that he fears death. Okay, and so he keeps repeating the same behavior. And finally she says this man, she goes, "What you don't know about women is a lot." And it's a great line by Olympia Dukakis in the movie. But anyway, and in the Italian way she says it.
Yeah.
But it's true. What consumers and or even the people that are influencing their decisions don't know is a lot.
Right.
And I will tell you that these two sessions or educational opportunities did so much to improve the influencers, the inspirers' perception and willingness to promote both these categories with greater confidence as well.
Are you familiar with the organization Brighter Bites
Yes,
in
I am.
Houston? They are doing a wonderful thing for kids in that area. It's a foundation. They are working with the parents of these children and low-income kids, and they're supplying fruits and vegetables that have been donated or people have given money to supply it, and they're taking them into the schools and giving them to the kids and the parents to take home and sample. And he was telling me that they had one child who had never eaten an orange, and this is a grammar school child.
Yeah.
And this is his way of attacking this problem of teaching people the joy of
Yes.
fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
So
Rich Stockman is that who you're talking to.
Yeah.
He's a friend of many, and I would call him a close friend as well. I think Brighter Bites is certainly a best-in-class program in that it does capitalize on the know, feel, and do part of this. So there's not just the products, right? There's the demand for the products because the locations that Rich and that Brighter Bites are going into, there's demand for food, period. Now we have an opportunity to decide or to help, craft kind of create demand around fresh fruits and vegetables. Then we have, and the desires there. Then we have the education that we were talking about before, because if you've never seen it, and this is like why it's so important too, to just step out of yourself for a second. Did that kid know how to peel it? Mm-hmm. How to get it started?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it difficult? Did it take a second? Maybe so. Then what do I do? Like, do I eat the peel? Or do I eat which one?
They
everybody
seem
can
like
figure it
simple
out.
questions to us, but for somebody who's never eaten
yeah.
one,
And
Like dragon fruit.
right. And then what do I do with this? Like, I'm only going to eat half. Now what else can I do with it? Or how do I prepare this in a really fun way for kids? And so I think what they're doing is an example of, yes, we're giving them nutrition education, but we're also really helping people feel good with fresh fruits and vegetables. And we're getting people to act on this. And I think some of the data coming out of that program shows that the exposure plus the education completed in a way that's meaningful for those communities, which won't be the same for everyone, is having a longer term impact even beyond the program, i.e. repeat purchase. And that's what the industry wants, and the community wants those health and well-being benefits and those experiences as well. So.
Did anyone notice in the program this morning, the educational session about the consumer research, that they asked people when they would eat fruits and vegetables, what percentage would they eat, what would they eat for lunch,
Yes.
breakfast? And one of the things was 33% of the people said they have vegetables for dessert. And I thought, I love vegetables, but
I don't know
I can't
about
think
that.
of having vegetables
I don't
for
know
dessert.
about that. Yeah. Unless they were talking like black bean something, you know what I mean? In a Asian, Asian
Teresa
cuisine.
makes a fantastic chocolate hummus.
yeah,
Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah. Okay, I need to try that. Yeah. for sure. But we have found similar, not so much on the dessert side, but similar kind of habitual, when do I typically eat this or that? And then, so there's two ways of looking at that. They were looking, saying, okay, what's the missed opportunity here? Let's add, for example, vegetables to breakfast items. So that's one way of looking at it. Or it's also, how do I look at what is the traditional behavior here? How do I add to that existing behavior? How do I create new ones?
Right.
How do I expand or enhance existing ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess if you had raw broccoli after dinner, you could call it dessert.
You could.
Well, in Europe, or I think it's changed a bit now, but when I first started going to Europe, I traveled there and worked there a lot. The salad was the last thing you ate in most countries there. France, and maybe not Germany, France, Spain. The salad was the last thing.
Well, and
I don't still not calling that
Anne
dessert.
Marie, she's Dutch, I think, so maybe that's where that one stat. She was like the
that's
one.
right.
Yeah. That's where that one came
I'm
from.
not sure I'd still call that dessert. But,
I guess we have to find out what does dessert mean.
Yeah.
Go back. Does that mean what you eat after you have your meal?
you get your just desserts in this world. That's all I can say. Well, you've anticipated a lot of my questions, and we'll keep you here all day and night if you could, but I'm sure you can't. So we're running out of time, but let's have a little fun.
Okay.
Let me get my notes up here. I want to know, what is Wendy's favorite reference to a fruit or vegetable in a movie or a TV show?
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. I was like, okay, I feel like the rapid fire is coming, but what is the question? I didn't anticipate that. My favorite.
Take your time.
Well, I could say one.
While you're go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say Rick is going to tell. I was going to ask Rick while you're thinking.
Okay, ask him and
to
then I'll
tell
go.
you what his is.
Yeah, and my favorite one is from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, I love that show.
Signs his mother up for the Fruit of the Month Club.
I remember a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she gets this box of pears, and she was dumbfounded. And Raymond came and said, "You sent me a whole box of pears. What am I supposed to do with these pears?" He said, "Well, it's the Fruit of the Month Club. Every month, a different kind of fruit box is going to come with different fruit." And she was, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do with all this fruit?" She was just carrying on and on about it. Well, give it to your neighbors. What is this? Some kind of a cult you signed up?
Yeah, right. And then she had to deal with it for an additional 11 months, right? So it was a little arduous in that respect. One of my colleagues reminded me about there was a movie called Goodwill Hunting was where the movie line was.
Okay.
Where there's a guy who's feeling a little bit maybe intimidated. He wants to ask this girl for her number because he's from Boston, and so finally, in the end, they're going back and forth. He's kind of the underdog, if you will, and finally he gets her number, by the way, and he goes over to the other guy and he says, "I got a number. How do you like them apples?" And so anyway, that was a good one. I kept thinking though, when you said this about George Bush, remember he made a comment about broccoli, about
he hated
and
it.
then he hated broccoli,
that was the
and then
first Bush.
That was WH, right?
Yeah, right.
So anyway, that one came to mind as well.
Yeah.
What about you? Let me put you on the hot seat here, produce buzzer.
I thought Rick was going to say this one: Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Oh yeah, that was there you go.
So, actually, Rick came up with that one. We had a little fun with this before on another one. And he
cool.
came up with that. Okay, so I got another one.
Okay, good. Okay, I like this game.
Name a band, a musical band that has fruit or vegetable in the name.
Oh my goodness.
There's two or three very popular ones, but I've found quite a few.
There are two or three. Like all I can think right now is because I was looking at this Deep Purple, but that's not. No. Okay, the Beatles. This is a plant-based protein.
That's true.
I can't think of it right now.
Okay.
You're really stumping me.
No, that's great. You
got me.
lost.
Oh, the Black
Black
Eyed
Eyed Peas.
Peas. Okay, I'm going to give that credit over to my friend over here with PBH,
Yes,
Katie
Katie,
Calagero.
yeah. Thank you, Katie.
Black Eyed Peas. She's good with music.
Right.
We should have her sing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a great singer.
Oh,
she's
my.
a great singer. So next time,
Well, there's
play
a couple
that
others.
tune.
Cranberries.
The Cranberries. Oh,
That's a good
I
one.
like that one.
Smashing Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins. Go do it again. Say it
Anybody
again.
else?
Chili, is there a
Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yes. Oh, that's one of my favorites so far. Okay.
Now, you're way too young for this, but there was Peaches and Herb.
No, I know that.
You
I know
really
that
know
group. Yes. I do.
There's a few others out there.
There
that will-
is.
that will
Okay,
go.
now these are great trivia questions,
I
by
asked
the way.
Alexa, and there's actually a group called Lettuce.
There is?
There is,
Yeah,
yeah. I
but,
came across that.
The music wasn't very good.
Okay.
Must have been Iceberg.
Yeah, right. I knew there was a pun in there. I was just like not clever enough for that. Okay, come on, let's do another one.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. Do I
you
have
have another one?
Well, let's go to idioms. You brought up, how do you like them apples? Can you think of any other fruit idioms? Fruit or vegetable?
Can you?
Yeah. there's a
You're
few
so
others.
smart.
There's a lot.
Oh, you've
well,
had time
I
to
do
think
a little
about
bit of
this. You did some
before I
research.
do this.
Okay, name one.
Well, cherry picking.
Oh, yeah. Stop cherry picking.
Yeah, stop
That's
cherry
right.
picking. There's a lot with apples. How do you like them apples? What is some? Now it's totally gone out of my mind. I was reading a bunch of the apple ones. Going bananas.
Yeah. I feel like that every day. After this conversation, for sure. These are great. So I need to come up with one now. We need a whole fruit and vegetable trivia.
Yeah, that's.
Type of
I think we should. Yeah,
game.
we have been doing that occasionally in episodes where I do a mystery fruit or veggie of the day.
Okay, and then
And I give them clues and they try to guess.
right.
And my clues are always too difficult.
There's some esoteric comment that makes absolutely no sense. You could put doorknob in there and it wouldn't fit.
Yeah, I got you. I see how he rolls.
I make them too difficult. Going back to the history, you know what?
Always has to
do you
be
know
the
what
winner.
Asparagus?
No, Hesperidium is.
Yes, I have known this.
The Hesperidium is an orange. Well, an orange is a Hesperidium, and it's basically.
So we're doing the botanic.
But where does the name? Where did the name Hesperidium come from? It came from Greek mythology.
Okay.
In an area called Hesperia, there was I won't get into the story because I'll probably mess it up, but there was a special garden that was called Hesperia, and they were called, what was growing in that garden were called golden apples in Greek, but scientists and historical botanists, I guess, believe those were oranges. And they were called golden apples, but the Greek term was
Truly,
golden apples.
but they were truly oranges.
Yeah, they think they were. So a botanist in the 1700s made that classification.
I thought it was going to be he was going to be Mr. Hesperium or whatever, name him after himself because,
now
found
everybody's
out.
asleep with my boring historical clues.
Oh, dear.
Oh, brother. Well, yeah, no. I think we should do next time, if there's hopefully there's a next time.
I'd love
we
that.
could do a name that tune, and Katie could sing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think this could be fun. I
All
think
right.
we could have even more fun next time.
That's true. Well,
Or play the music of the Cranberries.
what about songs that have fruits and vegetables in them?
All sing it with me.
I haven't done.
we did something like this. You should check it out, and maybe we could make a game out of this one. It was all fruit and vegetable puns on the names of songs. So we called it
songs.
"Sing It With Me."
Okay.
So like Britney Spears, "Oops, I Bit It" again, and with the thing like an apple,
Yeah.
or
I thought you were going to say
sweet.
asparagus spears.
Well, that you could do that too, or sweet clementine instead of sweet.
Oh, right.
And people got into this.
I bet. That's
because
cool.
and there's actually, I'm going to bring it back home here because we're getting crazy. There's actually a lot of this is rooted in behavioral science because song lyrics we typically assert with a memory, or at the very least, the lyrics themselves are what we would call sticky to your brain.
Right.
You memorize them. So the goal there for us was to get people thinking about fruits and vegetables
Right.
in the context of some of their favorite, most beloved songs, and then turn those initial thoughts into actual action. So
Yeah.
you can check out the campaign. It was fantastic. It was super successful.
That's a great way to end,
Yeah.
and that's what we try to do here. Our philosophy was, let's have fun
Yes.
as much as we can. Sometimes I get a little boring, but when we have fun, just to get people thinking about it and not preach to them. And I learned that from you and then PBH. That, no, we shouldn't be just say, eat your veggies. We need to have some fun with it. But thank you so much for being with us today, taking the time. Everybody, our listeners, go to fruitsandveggies.org and look at all the fantastic information that's there about fresh fruits and vegetables and great ideas, recipe ideas. You will be inspired. You will know, you will feel, and you will be inspired.
Yeah,
when you
to
go
actually
there.
do something.
That's right.
Let's do this.
So have a plan. Well,
That's-
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast today. We hope you enjoyed Wendy's insightful and inspiring interview. She, along with the others at the Produce for Better Health Foundation, are doing such important and effective work and having a great impact. Please visit their website and check out all the wonderful information, recipes, and great ideas to inspire you to eat more fresh fruit and veggies. Once again, the address is fruitandveggies.org. That's fruit, A-N-D, veggies.org. Fruitandveggies.org. Please take a second before you leave to subscribe and or follow our podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We are on over 10 different podcast feeds, including YouTube. And if you want to help support this podcast by making a donation, we would be so grateful. Just go to anchor.fm/produce-buzz, and you will see a support button below the podcast description. Click on it, give what you can. No amount is too small, and, of course, no amount is too large. Thank you, listeners, and good night. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page. And check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.